Good evening, my name is Greg Specht. This is 15325 Southwest Beaver Creek Court in Beaverton. I've been in the real estate development business for 35 years. My company is proud of the millions of square feet we have built over that time, the jobs we've created, the taxes we pay to support local services. I serve on the Metro Steering Committee as a representative of the construction and real estate industries. I'm here tonight to again make the case that Metro include a sufficient supply of employment land as urban in your decision-making process. In addition, I'm here to express my concern that should you fail to do so, you will be responsible for undermining the future economic vitality of the Portland metro region, and in so doing, lessen the economic future of the entire state. I also come before you this evening chagrined that I entered into my service on the steering committee believing that input from the business community would be factored into the urban-rural reserve decision-making process. My experience over the past 2 years is exactly the opposite. The thoughts, concerns, and opinions of the business community regarding the need for future employment land have not only not been incorporated into the maps now being considered, rather our opinions have been completely dismissed. Metro received comments and input throughout this process from well over a dozen organizations whose everyday existence is dealing with real estate, construction, financing, land use, and general business. Metro heard from the leader of the Regional Building Trades Council, representing tens of thousands of union construction workers who advocated reason and designated enough land as urban to meet projected future employment needs. We asked early in the process that all unconstrained lands within the study area be considered as urban candidate areas, and our request was denied. You heard from professional site selectors who reported that if the region does not have multiple shovel-ready sites available for construction, they will not recommend to their clients that Oregon be considered. You've heard from the local county advisory committees, particularly here in Washington County, who very thoroughly detailed their needs for urban land. Yet thus far, Metro, by proposing that only a maximum, depending upon whose map you believe, of 28,000 gross acres be designated as urban, has allowed themselves to be influenced in accepting a flawed picture of our future employment land needs to our collective detriment. And while your decision will impact the entire state, our governor regrettably has been missing in action throughout this exercise, and the economic development people in Salem have been muzzled as well. Economic prosperity in this effort is being sacrificed to the more noble gods of compact growth and farmland preservation. Quality of life includes an income, and to most folks that means a job. To assume our current quality of life can be maintained when both our population and employment will double over the next 50 years, with a corresponding future increase in land within the current UGB as proposed by Metro staff, perhaps 11% best case, doesn't pass the laugh test. For too long, both the Metro region and our state have given the back of their hand to those in our communities who create jobs. From land use policies to taxes, from environmental restrictions to zoning regulations, business has been the favorite whipping boy for many public officials, for elected officials, public employees, urban planners, transit agencies, and neighborhood activists. This animosity towards business must change if we want to promote and create long-term economic prosperity in coming years. The decision you will make is not a zero-sum game. Rural does not have to lose in order for urban to win. Employment can be embraced while retaining the culture of our many diverse regions and neighborhoods. There is room for everybody to win if the right decisions are made. In closing, I ring the bell of warning tonight based upon my own experience and the experience of many, many employers I represent. As you decide on the amount of land to designate as urban, I ask that you err on the side of business. Give the counties the amount of urban land they have requested and surround it with white space in case you make a mistake. Keep in mind that if you do not designate enough land for future employment use, and if that land is not in the right location, we will lose jobs in the future with existing firms who want to expand. We will lose potential new employers that want to locate in our region that cannot do so because there's no available land for their use. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. You want to take comments or questions?
Sure.
Councilor Burkholder?
I guess first a comment is that I understand that this map that we are looking at is not a metro map, it's a core 4 map, and so it was put forward by the reserve, and our job was to put it out there for public comment. I did want to ask a question though, that you mentioned employment lands.
Yes.
And so a number of these areas really that we actually have on the map and that were originally proposed were looked at as potential residential development areas. And so there are some areas that are very good and look like they're well designed for employment specifically. And there's other areas that, well, when you look at where they're located, what else is around there, it will probably be residential. And then, so I have a question for you: is you would you say that one of the criteria that we should be looking at is where we might get the most employment in industrial development?
Absolutely. I would strongly advocate that employment land be located next to the freeways. We didn't put them there. They were there, I-5, 36, 205, before any of us were around, before any of us were in any position to understand what's going on. We can't move them. So it seems to me logical that you double load those freeways. Go north of 26, both in Washington County and Multnomah County. Go on both sides of I-5. Go down to the county line south of the river. I mean, one of the great travesties of this whole process is that Clackamas County chose not to even look seriously at going south of the river. And frankly, there are a lot of folks in our business that are rooting for the Indians. Now, as to the map, the Chief Operating Officer's report, I think, had about 20,000 acres of urban land. So, I mean, there's a lot of maps floating around. I mean, there's 400,000 acres in the study area. I mean, it seems to me that the recommendation thus far is 260,000 for rural reserves, and depending on who you talk to, 25,000 for urban. You know, why is it a 10-to-1 ratio? That just doesn't make sense. Give employment 10% of the land in the study area. Put it where the transportation corridors are. You can do the rest of it what you want. But if you don't have jobs, this economy will not sustain itself.
Thank you.
Councilor Park?
Greg, thanks for testifying. Wasn't as fiery as I thought you were going to be, as you said earlier, so thank you. One of the questions that you were bringing up is the undesignated areas. And I want to be clear that if I understand what your concern is, that if, and through this process, we underestimate the amount of land necessary for either employment or housing, that's where you want to use as and have flexibility. Is that, am I?
A cushion, a buffer, yes. If you underestimate the land, the urban land, yes.
So it's the flexibility that you're really looking at is not necessarily, what I want to try to get at is if there's other treatments or methods that we may be able to get to the flexibility, would that be something you would like to look at rather than the undesignated?
Such as?
Well, I'm not willing to say what they are right now, but I think that there's potentially some ways that we could, I think when we try to examine what it is, I don't think any of us up here or out there are vain enough that we think that we can see a crystal ball out 50 years. But I do know in our processes we have the ability to do some check-ins, and that was one of the things that maybe we can't get it all the way downfield this time. Maybe we can get it most of the way with some ways of treatments to figure out how to make people more comfortable with the process. And the reality is we have people that are in the rural community that don't necessarily want to be locked away for 50 years either. So it's not just on one side of this.
A couple of thoughts. I'm an advocate for trying to keep it as simple as possible. This is not a simple process. But to the extent you designate it as urban, then it will be urbanized if it meets the criteria to be developed at some point downstream. If it's white space, it is subject to being urbanized if you go through the process, whatever that is, decades out. But if it's rural up against urban, it won't be developed for 50 years, no matter what the need. One other thing, I mean, many people who've come before you in this whole process have vested interest, and that's fine. The business community has no vested interest. I own no land in the study area. I represent nobody who owns land in the study area, and it's okay to advocate for your property being in or out. We come here tonight to tell you what we think about the economic impact of decisions you're making. And I would encourage you, you're not going to hit it, you're not going to nail it, you're not going to be perfect, you're going to make a mistake. I would suggest that you err on the side of business. You then have to go through the process, even in 30 years, to bring this land in, if it can meet the criteria. Don't err on the side of rural, because the whole part of the whole process here is to marry both the urban requirements and the reserve requirements as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Specht.